So I have a really interesting thing to share with you today. And so what you can see here is actually an Angular Material 3 theme builder app that I built recently to showcase a new easy theming method that I came up with. So as you can see, the components here are really similar to the material theming. You can see the inputs, they have some errors here. If you can see, you have an error here. You have progress bars, dialogues. You have all of those components, material components. They seem really similar to the official themes. But what if I told you that this actually theming, this color, this appearance of material components is actually derived from just 6 CSS variables. As you can see here, the primary light, and all of the others, this whole theming is actually derived from just 6 CSS variables. Now, since they are derived from these CSS variables, this means that they can also be dynamically changed. So, for example, we can also change it. And when we change it, it's going to instantly in the UI. Great, right? And also, it doesn't restrict itself to a light theme. So these three are light themes, but these 6 colors can also accommodate creating dark themes. So this dark teal is a theme which is also derived from these 6 colors. So looks good, right? But how does it all work? And what prompted me to actually come up with this new easy material theme? And now to explain that, I'll have to go back to a client project that I did recently. And it is basically a Quran display app that I built with a client, and it was meant to read the Quran, which is a holy book for the Muslims. Now there weren't many material components that we used. We used this list, Angular material list, and we used some of the input like checkboxes and these button toggles. But the client wanted sort of 3 themes and the ability for the user to switch between these 3 themes. So as you can see here, we have the green theme here, and we have the blue theme here, and we have the red theme here. And you can see how beautifully the color changes at runtime. So how did I create this? Now, initially, I went for the official Angular Material Theming API because that is the obvious way to go about it. But then I decided against it. Now, why did I do that? Now, I think for me personally, the Angular Material Theming API has 3 problems which really prevents me from using it fully. So the first one is that it is based on SAS. And not everyone knows that. Entry level developers don't know that because CSS is also getting really powerful nowadays. So I didn't want to learn it just because I wanted to use Angular Material theming. So Angular Material theming uses SAS to generate the color shades and variations. And it requires us to sometimes use maps to get the values of the colors, and sometimes, also create mixins and stuff. Sometimes, not always. So it is a bit difficult to grasp for those who don't know SAS. The second issue with the Angular Material Components theming API, official theming API, is that it uses pretty large color sets or color palettes to actually generate the same sort of shades in the material components. So, for example, if let me show you the code here. So, this is a theme, a custom sort of theme that I generated using a hue that I gave. Now, by the way, Angular Material version 18 provides this new schematic which you can actually use to generate a color palette using a sample hue for the primary, for the secondary, and for the tertiary. So I generated it just to see how this works. And though it works really nice and it's a nice utility in departure from the past where there was no such utility, but you can see here that we have a lot of colors that we need to choose from. So you can see here that we have a 16 sort of primary color shades. We have sort of 16 secondary color shades. We have about 16 tertiary color shades. Then we have neutral shades, which are more than 16. Then we have neutral variant shades. And then we have about 16 error shades. So in all, there are a lot of colors to actually get to grips with. And your client usually is going to provide you basically 2 or 3 colors to match it to create their UI schemes. And of course, when it generates it, even if you can see here that it generates it from the hue of 02 to F40 here, but we can see that it's very difficult to get this specific color from this primary color palette. In fact, I think it's not even here. So how do we actually get it for use in our applications in different places? If, for example, the client wants a specific color to be used in some places. So in short, the color palettes are basically too large and it's difficult to set up. So the third issue then it follows from this generation process of the official material theming is that it's not dynamic. So you can't really change it at runtime. All of the shades for the material theming are generated at build time, and you need to basically have these theming files each of the color palettes so that you can import them in your styles.sas file and then use them in your material components. Even if you have to switch between them, you can provide that functionality, but you will have to have it at build time. So you can't really come up with a color scheme or a set of colors at runtime and allow the user to change it. Or, for example, get it from the API. So that's the third issue that I had. Now we can try to use CSS variables here. So for each of the colors here in the primary, for example, shades list, we can actually use a CSS variable. And then we can change that CSS variable maybe dynamically at runtime, allowing the user to change it. But as you can see, there are such a lot of colors that it will be very, very difficult to maintain such a large list of CSS variables. Again, very difficult to set up. Now, my project was pretty simple, so I didn't want to go through all of this hassle. So then I thought, why go through all of that hassle of the official material theming API, and why not just flip this problem around? So flipping the problem around means that I will keep my own set of specific colors, maybe 2 or 3 shades that the client wanted expressly here. So for example, for this app, if I go in my elements and in my body tag, you can see that I have the red theme applied currently, and it has a primary color, a highlight border color. So these are the three colors that my client provided for each of the theme that they wanted. So I put these as CSS variables. Then I use the design tokens that are being provided in version 18 of Material. In fact, even before that. And I just use these CSS variables to actually set the values of the components that I was using, the material components. So for example, if I click on this IR here, you're going to see that it's going to highlight this. And this is an official Angular material list. So how did I theme it using my CSS variables? I simply went into the specific component here, for example, the list, and I looked at the MDC list item container color, which is a design token used to color the container of the selected list item. And then I just assigned it to my CSS variable, the highlight variable that I wanted. Similarly, I also used it for the toolbar here. So as if you look at the toolbar, it has the background as a variable mat toolbar container background color, and I simply assign this mat toolbar background container color to the primary color variable that I had for my theme. I did the similar thing with, for example, this mat tooltip, as you can see. And when you change the colors here, you can see that the tooltip also changes. So the specific components that I was using, I only overrode those specific CSS variables according to my own CSS variables, which I was using for theming my app. And then what I did was simply to create 3 classes. For example, the first one is the blue theme. And when we switch, you can see that we have the red theme here. It switches to the red theme. Then it switches to the green theme. So there are basically 3 classes. And you can see in each of the class, we have simply overridden or given the values of my primary highlight and highlight border this variable. That change actually leads to that change in the whole UI. So this works really well for it. And it also allowed me to add my custom highlighting. So for example, this background is actually a custom highlighting. This is not a material component. And this, for example, this circle here, this is a custom list sort of component I made. So this color can be overridden by simply giving a background and the variable of highlight using my CSS variable. So I can do custom theming of my own components easily, and I can also theme the material components that I was using. So it's a win-win situation. Also, the benefit was it was quick to set up and it makes it more dynamic. I can allow the user to maybe get this theme or get these CSS variables from some API in the future if the user wants it. So this got me thinking, why don't I extend all of the material components to actually use this new theming system? I use the CSS variables and essentially make an easier, more dynamic way to theme Angular material components. Of course, we will be using our own set of colors and the custom design tokens provided by the Angular material version 18. So then I started on this small mission to get something working. And initially, as you can see here, we have about 6 colors, which I'm going to come in a bit. But I started off with the primary light, and the ripple color. And since we are going through this color, I'm going to tell you each of the colors and how it applies to the material components. But let's start designing our own theme in real time so that you can get a good understanding of what are the colors that I'm talking about. So let's start with the primary color here. So the primary color is basically your client's main branding color. Okay. And so here, for example, it's steel, but let's go in this color selector that I have here, coolers.co. And here you can select different shades of colors. You can have other utilities as well on the web, which provide this facility. So I'm going to take this violet blue color, which looks really nice to me, and assume that it's given by the client. So I'm just going to copy the hex here. I'm just going to paste this in my primary color here. And you can see that the change is instantaneous. And now you can see that what is actually the primary color. It actually appears on the flat buttons. It appears on the toolbar here. It appears on the color of the text here. You can see of the fields, on the outlines, the slides. So it appears in very prominently in different Angular material components. In the table here, you can see the drop downs. You can see, well, not that much in the drop down, but the outline of the drop down, as you can see. So this is basically the primary color. Now, the second color is the primary light, and the primary light color is basically a lighter shade of the primary color. It is usually kept that, and you can keep it something else as well, but to keep your UI harmonious, basically, the Angular material theming actually uses this primary sort of a primary container color. So how do we get the primary container color? Now we already have our different shades here. You can view your shades, and then you can go to a very light color here. I'm going to make it really light here. So I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to copy it in my primary light. And you can see it's pretty light. But now you can see that when I hover over the buttons, you can see that I get this nice light color derived from the primary color. And when you see the inputs, this is basically the container of the input, and you can see the color looks really nice. Similarly, the slider, you can see this light color. This is basically the light container color. So the primary light color is basically the color of the containers of the components in most cases. And in the table here, you can see there is a drop down here. So you can see the light background color here. This is basically the primary light color. Okay. So this gives a nice touch. And then we have a ripple color. Now, what's a ripple? So a ripple is basically when you click on a button or interact with an element. For example, I interact with this. You can see that we have this color here. This is, as I inspected in the material theming, I saw that it is basically a translucent color based on the primary color. So to get that, we can basically just copy the primary color and just add one E at the end of the hex to actually make it transparent. And now you can see that when you click on this, you can see that we have this same shaded sort of translucent color appearing pretty nicely. So this is the ripple color, which gives a nice material component effect to the buttons. Okay. So as you can see now, we already have a pretty nice looking light material components theme, and all of the components look pretty reasonable. You can see the primary color is there in every place. The containers look really nice. So, but then why do we need the rest of the colors? So the rest of the colors are then meant to ensure a dark theme, because I got a bit carried away and I thought that maybe a dark mode theme would be actually really useful for this new sort of dynamic material theming system. So to do that, I added three more colors. And the first of that is the primary dark color. Now, the primary dark color is basically the color of the outlines and the text, basically. So I have kept it black here, as you can see, and it looks reasonable enough. But if you want it really, sort of harmonious, you can actually make it a very dark shade of the primary color. So for example, you go in your shades here and you can get this dark shade, very dark shade, close to black. You can get this, you can copy this, and you can put this here. Okay. Now it's a very small change, so you won't be able to tell it that clearly. But if you zoom in, for example, in a checkbox here, you can see that this color is basically the outline colors are basically of this shade. Okay. Okay, so for the dark mode, the main thing is the background color. Now for the background color, you can see that the background color is white here, or a sort of a light grayish color, a very light grayish color. So this looks really nice for a light theme. But for a dark theme, what we would need is a sort of a darker shade of the primary color itself. We don't need absolutely black, because absolutely black is going to give you a lot of contrast, which is usually frowned upon, for dark modes, because then it becomes really difficult to read. So we can either keep a very dark gray color, or we can keep a very dark shade of the primary color here. So let's go and create a very dark shade of the primary color here. So let's take this one, maybe this one. Let's copy this in. And once we copy this in, you can see that we have a nice background. But then you see the containers are looking not that nice. So we need a sort of a darker shade in the containers. So we need to change this primary light. What do we could put in the primary light? Let's go to the shades and let's make it a bit less dark, and let's add this to the primary light. Okay. So this shades look nice. But what happened to the text? You can see the text is basically quite dark. So we actually need to change the primary dark to make it lighter. So how do we change the primary light now? We can change the primary light by going in the shades again and selecting a very light shade here, close to white. So let's copy this here and let's change this primary dark to this. Now, this depends on the contrast that you would want. Now, I have kept this very close to white, but you can actually a bit less than white so that it's less sort of hurting on the eyes. It has less contrast, so you can copy a hex here and you can maybe make it something like this. So this looks a bit better, less shocking for the users. Okay, so this looks good, but I think the primary color is a bit too dark for the light color. So let's keep a primary color which is a bit lighter. Let's take this one and let's copy this in and let's see. So yeah, you can see that this looks a bit better. So not every primary color is going to work with a dark theme. So you need to be mindful of that fact. Okay. So now we have a pretty reasonable looking dark mode. Now, obviously, you can improve upon it. You can test out different things. You can test out different themings. And the fact that you can change it at runtime actually allows you to theme things on the fly as well. Okay, so this covers all of the five colors. But what about the six color error? Now, the error color, as you can see, if you go in inputs and you choose a date here, you can see this error color. This looks kind of weird on a dark background. So that is why I needed to also override the error color here, because for dark modes, usually the error color is a bit lighter in shade. So I'm going to copy a shade here, which is a lighter red color so that it is more suited for a dark mode. So you can see now this error looks a bit more reasonable, and you can have an error here as well. You have an error here as well. So overall, it is much better for your eyes. All right. So you can see we have in real time created another theme, a dark theme, and it looks reasonably well. And in the process, we also learn about these six shades and how I actually came up with, that I needed these six shades. And you can see that we only need these six shades to actually create a light and also a dark theme. The important ones being the primary light, the ripple color, and the sort of the less important, or for dark mode, the rest of the three colors: primary dark, background, and the error color. Okay, and what's the greatest thing about this is that it's all dynamic. So you can allow your users to change this at runtime. You can allow the users to get it from an API call. You can allow your users to design themes on the fly, whatever you want. But it provides a lot of flexibility in changing the appearance of our material components. Great. So now you're asking how can you can actually use this in your own projects. So now all you have to do to use this in your own projects is to just include a simple CSS file. So I've created a simple CSS file here. You can see that it's called easy theming, and it's a simple CSS file in which I have overridden all of the variables by a lot of inspection over the last 3 or 4 days, and I have put it in the body tag. So it's going to override all of the material components, CSS design tokens that are provided to us. And then you just need to go in your styles.sas file and you can just import this CSS file and you're going to be good to go. Now, after that, obviously, you need to set these six color variables through your app. You can do it through a custom class that you can create. You can create classes for different themes that you create, or you can do it dynamically as I'm doing it in this app, in this theme builder app that I have. So if I show you that a bit, you can see that in my app.component, I am actually setting these properties in an effect, the effects API, and I'm using a theming service in which I am actually setting these variables through the input fields. Now I'm releasing this theme patch file and also this theme builder app on my small shop that I have on Buy Me a Coffee, and you can see that I have already uploaded them here. I'm going to post the link of both of these in my video description, and you can also just go directly to my Buy Me a Coffee page here, buymeacoffee.com/Zoaib Khan, and in my shop. And you can see here, especially in the member discount section, or you can go to all and you can see that I have these two small utilities provided here. So one is the easy Angular material theming CSS file. In case you don't need the theming builder, you can get it for a very small price here. And if you need the whole theme builder along with the theming patch, which I just showed you here, you can get it for a bit more on my shop here. Of course, if you become a member on my Buy Me a Coffee, then you are going to get a bit of a discount, about 30% discount on both of these. I hope you found this short demo of my new easier Angular material theming system useful for your own projects. For me personally, I'm going to be using this way to theme Angular material components in my future projects because it's so easier to use than the official material theming API. Now, of course, it might have some rough edges here and there, and you can actually keep changing things. You can change the theming, which variables are connected to which Angular material components in the theming file that I provide. And you can build upon this for your own custom project, for your own project's needs. And I'd love to hear your feedback about this. So, do you think this is something that you will use? Do you think that it is a bit hacky? So, whatever your thoughts are, put them in the comments. I would love to hear your feedback about this. And as always, at the end, please like and subscribe to my channel so that my videos can reach more people and it can benefit the larger community. Thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next video with something interesting to share.